Good afternoon. Welcome to this session, Transforming the Chemicals Industry for Sustainability. I'm super pleased to share the stage here with Dirk Ramhorst. And we'll quickly introduce ourselves, and you will introduce yourself, obviously yourself. So I'm Elisabeth, and I'm leading sustainability services for the EMEA region for IBM Consulting. Dirk.
Yes, and I'm Dirk Ramhorst. I'm the CIO of Evonik for almost a year now. Before that, I was 6 years in Wacker Chemie and another 8 years in BASF. So a little bit of footprint in the chemical and process industry. And for those that have seen Hannah Mills on these other panel earlier, I'm also in sailing in my second life. So you can choose. Either we should continue on sailing or chemical industry.
Perfect. And we will go into the water aspect in a moment as well. But
yes.
First of all, a bit of context. So obviously, you have heard in the last couple of days and today, sustainability has landed on the executives' agenda. And for us, in our work, there's really no conversation where this is not brought up. If it's a SAP, S/4HANA transformation, a cost optimization, or cloud advisory project, we are always asked, how does this contribute to my sustainability targets? How does it make me faster towards my net zero ambition? And we clearly see that in the data. 86% of companies have a strategy in place. 82% of CEOs even say that investments will deliver business results in the near term. And we know that 4 out of 5 customers would be more loyal to brands that contribute to their sustainability goals. But we also all know this. Very few are really taking real action. Around a third of companies have taken real steps toward the sustainability ambition. Many are very uncertain how to move forward. And when we look at what the key challenges are, there are always 2 big challenges in all the studies, not only in our IBM studies, but the unclarity on the return on investment, on whether it comes, when it comes, where it comes in the company, and the lack of insights from data. That are the 2 number 1 challenges. And in the upcoming IBV study, the data part will be even stronger as a key challenge. And nowhere is this challenge and the complexity more prevalent than in scope 3. Because obviously it's much harder to access the data across the value chain for our organization. And nowhere is it more critical to have a clear view on your CO2 emissions in your supply chain. Like for common companies like Evonik, for CPG companies, the CO2 emission that they have, about 80% are within the supply chain. So it's really critical to address that part. So far as the context, and what we are really observing with the companies we are working is that there are 5 key things to be aware of. First of all, the clarity on what do you really need the data for. Is it for your ESG report, where you still can work with averages and estimates? Is it to make a claim on the most sustainable Coca-Cola bottle, shampoo bottle, the content and the bottle itself, like using the information for competitive advantage, where you better prove that it's real data? Or is it about finding an insight in an area in your organization to leverage for other areas? So to be really clear for what you need the data for, because all of you will know the complexity of scope 3, and to address all the categories at once is too complex and too much of an effort. So we really work with our clients on making very clear on what do you need the data for. 2 examples for this. In the UK, many of you might have followed, we are working with the UK Fashion Trust, helping fast fashion retailers on their transparency in the supply chain. And we are working on basically tracing the cotton from the field to the T-shirt that's sold in the heart of London. And that includes 6 tiers of suppliers. It's highly complex. You have all different data points. You have on the cotton fields, basically farmers you work with, cotton pickers you work with that obviously don't have like the digital maturity, the invoices, etc., that you can have like proper access to data to. So we have done one case, 18 months of basically work to trace this cotton to the t-shirt. Why have we done that? Because we have one trial case in the field of cotton that we can now scale to all the other companies as well. And a really good side effect of that was that we helped to identify multiple inefficiency along the supply chain. And we will hear later on a couple of more benefits that typically come when you start to bring transparency in the supply chain. So that is one observation backed by this case. Another one that's closer to the chemicals industry is our work with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and a big FMC player, where we help to assess and validate data for the detergent and the bottle. Because for this company, it was critical that they want to have the label on the bottle that it's carbon neutral, and they knew they have to be prepared for scrutiny. So we did this one case that we can now scale. So first observation, be very clear on what do you need the data for. And when you capture it once, try to use it everywhere else. The second one is make the process as easy and repeatable as possible because it's so complex. At the moment, most of the data is in PDFs or little invoices. So we are working on making it easy, digestible, easy to scale within a company. So that's a second big observation and learning from work in this space. And the third one is obviously work very closely with your suppliers, hand in hand. What are the specifics in the products that you really need? What can you change to help reduce the carbon impact? How can you source from a different geography to reduce the travel distance? How can you help a supplier to transform and, for example, change from fossil fuel energy to renewables? We're working with a couple of dairy companies, making that possible for the farmers and basically helping them to change the stables from fossil fuel to renewables. So really develop that with your suppliers. And the fourth big aspect really is to move very, very fast to build confidence that it's possible, to really choose a use case approach, to show the organization it's possible to bring light into the supply chain. And why is that so important? Because anyone here who knows supply chain knows it's quite an opaque business. It's meant to be opaque because that's a competitive advantage, and bringing transparency in the supply chain is the opposite of that. So you will have a lot of resistance from the stakeholders. You will have resistance from your own organization to bring that kind of transparency into that. And that's why this human factor, the communication around it, and the fast success that you can show with very selected use case is so relevant. So that are basically the key observations that we have made. And the summary, and then handing over to you, Dirk, is basically when all this is in place, being really targeted, really clear, what do you have to do, what do you need it for, will drive a business value that's beyond the sustainability case. And all this concern, when do I have the ROE, when will it pay off, is very, very quickly basically pushed aside when you have a real use case. Because in all the work that we do, you have efficiency gain that nobody expected, you have cost reductions, you have a much better, easier management across your supply chain, you have data that you can use for insights to initiate new products and services, and you have a very, very strong case towards your customers. Just remembering that 4 out of 5 customers are more loyal to brands that really align with that strategy. And these customers at the moment, and you have heard that in the last session, and it's something that we see again in the upcoming study, that the trust of customers in what companies are saying and what they're actually doing is completely dropping. We are all losing trust in the real action companies are taking. So if the actions are targeted, the business case is clear, and you use this data for more than just feeding your report, then there is a real business value. And we have a company here in the chemicals industry which is not known for being the most advanced, to say that, in the sustainability area, because it's a really high carbon, high energy industry. And we have you here, Dirk. And what would be very interesting to hear from you is like, what's the motivation and what value are you gaining from the agenda you are driving at Evonik?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me to be here. Probably most of you might know Evonik from the sponsorship of Borussia Dortmund, and you have seen them in the Champions League lately. But this is part of the challenge that we face in the industry, that we are, on the one hand side, very early in the value chain, and we are somehow producing topics and products that at the end help to save energy, for example, in isolation, in other aspects of the world. And while we're talking about scope 1, 2, 3, what is lacking, for example, is the scope 4 dimension, because this is somehow, especially for our industry, very valuable. Nevertheless, like you said, we are highly and heavy industry, let's say, or energy heavy. That means scope 1 is definitely a big topic, and with the developments over the last almost more than a year now, with the energy prices, etc., there's of course another driving force besides sustainability that drives this area. Secondly is, of course, how we can optimize the way we produce our topics in the scope 2 perspective. And like you also pointed out in relation to scope 3, this is something where we all have to come up with a miracle, I would say, because the whole ecosystem at the same point of time has to develop in order to close the scope 3 challenges. And this is what we're facing, and we try to do this with one major force in our organization, which is the understanding of data. And the understanding of data that we already have, because what is also very special to our industry is that also by the nature of the industry, we are all, let's say, coming from the past, try to avoid inefficiencies. Maybe you have heard about the so-called Verbund idea in chemical industry, which means that out of one part of the plant, you take outcome like heat as a catalyst to another one. And that means you have an intercorrelation of different parts of the production, even different factories. Just because any kind of heat that you would give away, like just the steam, is waste in a certain way to the ecosystem, and you use the steam as a catalyst and instead of producing new steam for another process. So therefore the industry, even with this not known as a positive example in decarbonation, is already very effective. So now we have another force which tries, of course, to help us further.
And what is like the drive behind Evonik? Why are you making, like, I would say, quite extraordinary steps in the industry to bring more light in your data?
I mean, there are multiple aspects also here. And it's like the Olympic Games in ice skating, where you have the must part and the to be part. And the must part is, of course, a regulation, because there's a certain set of things we have to deliver by next year, and then a year later, even in the way that it's auditable. So this is, of course, one driving force. The second part is we are aiming to become the number one as a special chemical company, and therefore it's also aimed to our markets that we are serving, that we fit into what our customers expect from us. So it's nothing just to do because of the legal obligations. It's really something because we want, as being part of this special chemical company, also a leading partner for our customers. And again, like many chemical companies, we are everywhere. We make your towels feel more soft in the morning. We are in your mattresses. If you have an artificial hip, maybe we are replacing the bone by our polymers. So therefore, we are everywhere. And in all these processes and all the different customer industries we're serving, it is part of the game in order to feed into their scope 3 part.
You talked about the necessary collaboration across the supply chain, and when we talk about scope 3, right? Just the UK fashion glass example was 6 tiers of suppliers, multiple different stages. That's a supply chain, but how do you manage, like within your own organization, with the different business lines, with maybe also contradicting interests? How is that? Is the whole like company aligned, or when you look to peers, do you think that this alignment, this collaboration across the organization is there, or when it's not there, what are the main blockers?
I mean, we have 4 divisions facing the market with 16 business lines, and the maturity of this topic in the different business lines or their serving markets is different, and therefore there's a different level of push and pull from this perspective. The biggest challenge that I see, so in my role, I'm responsible for IT. My role is to make those things happen in terms of enabling it. Because, of course, we can still do certain things on paper, but in this certain size, it's no longer working. So IT plays a major role as an enabler. And here I see a major challenge not across the different businesses, but I see the whole topic of sustainability as a multiple interaction point across all parts of the organization, from accounting over innovation management to HR, because we have also trained people and educate people to IT. So it's a really cross the disciplinary topic, and this is the success factor to make this happen.
You had quite an ambition last year to embark on this journey, to pull out all the data in one place to support the reporting. What's your biggest learning from the initiative started last year to put all the sustainability data in one source of truth?
I think it's even started earlier, but so it took us a major effort in order to add this kind of sustainable reporting on top of the normal quarterly or annual report. The learning is, and this is also maturity of the whole topic. I mean, somehow with all the legislation still in development, we're working against a moving target.
Yeah.
But one of the key findings is that it's no longer something that you add to the reporting. It's not like you have your annual report and then you have an appendix. It is, or it will become an integrated part. And this means also in your internal systems, in the way you treat data related to sustainability, it's part of the game. It's no longer something you add on maybe at the end of the day if you have some time left and then you think about, okay, what are the numbers? No, it's integrated. And so our aim is also that each and every transaction, for example, in SAP, related to supply chain, but procurement, whatever you look in, has a footprint that we document in terms of consumption of greenhouse water, waste, or whatever is related to this transaction. And so that at the end of the day, the reporting is an integral part also to the existing systems that we have in place for the commercial part. Because it's just another domain of the commercial reporting, not an extra domain anymore.
And when you look at the year ahead, where would you say are the areas where you will see the most acceleration, and where maybe areas you might slow down or struggle with?
So the first phase now was very much about to understand what is our footprint related to our products.
Yeah.
So now we look into greenhouse, we look into water and waste. So these are the next layers or next domains we're tackling. And this is also important, and really to showcase what we have achieved here. I mean, by the nature of the gas price explosion, so to speak, in the last year, for example, we were able to reduce the consumption of natural gas in our major plant by 40%, because we found alternative ways, or we even further improved processes. And this, besides the reason for this, which was the war and the price explosion, we have to continue this road in order to contribute to the sustainability topic.
And then a quick last question from like your role in Evonik and your personal role. What are the top 2 drivers for you personally as a CEO, and then maybe as a person too?
I mean, one of the reasons why I changed from working in Munich to the place I work now in northern Germany is I live in northern Germany, and it was strange for me to go on the plane on Monday morning to fly to commute into an office. And 2 years ago, I set my own target to decarbonize my commute in Germany, and I do this now by train. And this I have reached, and I hope that we can also reach these targets that we have overall in society.
Thank you, Dirk. We are at the end of this conversation already. We will be here for a moment for more questions. Great example, Evonik is taking a huge step forward and is a role model, I think, for many other companies, as I know in Europe. They're looking towards what you are doing, and it's an extraordinary CIO organization taking this so seriously. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And now we talk about sailing, right?
Yes, the sailing bit, exactly.